Hey, Tim Frisch with A Frisch Perspective here. In recent videos, I've been talking about two views of COVID, and it has sparked some really interesting discussion in the comments section. Definitely there is more than one view of the COVID situation, and that really comes out in the back and forth that I see in the comments. And really, I'm just trying to help us sort through all of this, give some of my own perspective, present some information. I've talked a lot about Pastor John MacArthur. I know he's a lightning rod, and he comes down on his side, and people have very different views of the position that he takes. So I've shared how he lays out his case. He's kept his church open indoors for a lot of the months during the pandemic, and people have had issues with that, but he has tried to make his case. He's even been in a court battle and has actually really been able to keep his church open and continue to have indoor services, although his church is an exception in Los Angeles. Anyway, I just wanted to share some headlines, quickly show some articles here. The first one here is actually one pointed out to me by one of the viewers, and it says, Evangelical Doctors Group pleads with churches to stay home. And this is an NPR article. I'll leave a link to the articles in the description below this video. Within this article, there's actually a link to the plea, and this is from Christian Medical and Dental Associations, and it says, a plea to our churches, November 19th. And really the case that they're making as they ask churches not to meet in person in large numbers is that it's really showing love to our neighbor. As there's another surge of the coronavirus, it is wiser and better and more loving not to meet indoors in large groups during this time. So that's really echoing a lot of what you hear, I think, in the media and most of what you hear in our culture. MacArthur, and what I presented from him, is a counter view, and I know that it's out of a lot of the norm of what we hear, and so it creates a lot of reaction. Some of you are really behind what MacArthur is saying. Some of you strongly disagree. I wanted to show you, though, another thing interesting happening out in Los Angeles, that area of California. It says here, Orange County restaurants collectively protest in defiance of Newsom's order. And this is from December 8th, 2020. Democratic California Governor Gavin Newsom's stay-at-home order went into effect Monday, shuttering restaurants and other small businesses throughout the state. Some restaurants in Orange County have banded together, however, and will remain open in defiance of the order. Publicist Alexandra Taylor called on business owners in Orange County to voice their support for the Open Safe movement in an Instagram post tagging every restaurant and small business that pledged allegiance. The list has been rapidly growing since. A little later it says, in the official Open Safe statement, the restaurants agreed to continue following the safety protocols as laid out by the CDC guidelines while staying open in defiance of the order. So this brings up an interesting point, and I think it's really something worth taking a look at, that it's not just churches that are affected by lockdowns. Restaurants would be another example of people that are heavily affected. I've talked before about how it's not just people's health that we're looking at in this situation, it's also people's livelihood. And so there's a lot to think about here. But what these restaurant owners are saying is they think the lockdowns are too restrictive, and it's obviously going to hurt their business very badly. So they are going to, on one hand, follow the CDC guidelines, and they're going to try to be safe in how they conduct their business, but they are going to defy the orders set down in Orange County because they're just overly restrictive from the perspective of these restaurant owners. Now, another headline that I saw really speaks to this, and this is an article that says, Judge says LA County acted arbitrarily in closing outdoor restaurant dining. With an injunction likely coming, county officials could be forced to walk back the current modified public health order for now, but that doesn't mean restaurants can reopen just yet. Los Angeles County officials suffered a legal setback today in County Superior Court, with Judge James Chalfant issuing a tentative decision that says, in part, county officials at the LA Department of Public Health and Board of Supervisors acted arbitrarily when deciding to close outdoor dining back on November 25th. Fox 11's Bill Milligan was the first to share the tentative decision. A more formal potential injunction is likely to be announced this afternoon. So what does this new legal announcement really mean? A few things. First and foremost, this does not mean that restaurants under the purview of the LA County Department of Public Health, which is every restaurant in the county except for those in Pasadena and Long Beach proper, can open today for on-site outdoor dining. The state's regional stay-at-home order, set forth on Sunday at midnight as area ICU bed capacity continued to fall to alarming levels, still supersedes any regional decision. So a couple things that are being brought out here. One is that the public health officials are really concerned about the ICU bed capacity, and that is falling at an alarming rate, is what they're saying. And so there are not going to be enough hospital beds for people as the coronavirus continues to spread. On the other hand, what this is also bringing out is that even the court is saying that the way that the government is dealing with this is acting arbitrarily. And so it really brings up this point that if the government is going to put restrictions in place, they have to back it up with good science and data. Is it really going to help prevent the spread of the disease to take the measures that they're taking, such as closing outdoor dining? Later, the article actually says, overall, Judge Chalfant says that more data and or a stronger argument from the county is needed in court to support any future ban of on-site outdoor dining of indeterminate length. The county's argument that restaurants are higher risk spaces because people gather unmasked and spread COVID via expelled droplets, Chalfant says, only weakly supports closure of outdoor restaurants dining because it ignores the outdoor nature of the activity, which the CDC says carries only a moderate risk and less with mitigations. So it sounds like the judge is saying there's really not enough science to back up closing outdoor seating indefinitely the way that the county has chosen to do so. So what these restaurant owners are doing makes a lot of sense. They're protesting and they're saying, we want to continue to be open, but we're going to do it in a safe way that follows CDC guidelines. So I wanted to present all of this to you so you could kind of see what's going on and see how different people are looking at it. One of the things I will say, though, is that when I see how the government is handling this situation, I think it's really, really important that the government has really good data backing up any decisions that they make. Because when they have to walk back certain restrictions, it really garners more distrust from people. It's one thing for the government to say, we have good science to say, this is how we should do things for the time being. This is the amount of time we're going to put these restrictions in place. But when they don't have very good, clear data to back up their decision, and they put those restrictions in place indefinitely, it garners a lot of distrust. And then you see people like restaurant owners, as well as churches, other entities, bucking against the government. And what's interesting is that these people are actually winning cases in court, at least to some degree. Take John MacArthur's case. He's brought it to court, and actually, to some degree, the courts have not really been on the side of the government. In this case here, the judge is saying the government is probably acting arbitrarily. That's not really helping the government's restrictions and the case that they're trying to make when they act arbitrarily. I think one of the principles that we should keep in mind, and I wish the government would keep this in mind, is that if you really care about something, you have to hold it in place at the right level. If you hold it too loosely, yes, it's not going to have any control. It could go away. But if you hold it too tightly, you will strangle it and it will fight for its life. We see that, for example, in the story of mice and men. So it's kind of like that right now with the government. I understand them wanting to protect and put safety measures, but if they do so too tightly, they're really going to cause more of a reaction. So there's a balance that they have to achieve for optimal effectiveness. Also, I think it's really important as I think about all this, I love that these restaurant owners are saying we are going to follow CDC guidelines. And I think something that seems to be missed today is that even if someone is maybe critical to some degree of the government, that doesn't mean that they're not going to take precautions. Another thing that I would add to all of this conversation is just the idea of trusting the citizenship to do things that are responsible and caring for others. Getting back to what that article was saying about churches loving their neighbors, I believe in that principle. We should love our neighbor, but they're kind of making an assumption that people that go to church aren't going to be careful at all, and they're not loving their neighbor, and they're just going to be sick, and they're just going to spread it everywhere. They're not going to take any precautions. I really think we can trust people more than that. Now, do I think it's good that we have people reminding us we need to be safe, we need to be careful, even government giving us certain amount of restrictions? I can understand that, but I think, again, there's a balance that has to be achieved. And so as I look at the situation, I really just keep seeing these two sides, and they're kind of pulling on each other. And again, we see that in the comments of these videos. You see that also in the information that I'm presenting here. Well, I think I've said enough about this issue for this video. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments, but just try to keep those comments constructive, helpful, edifying to others. But thank you so much for listening to the information that I've presented here and some of my thoughts brought to you from A Frisch Perspective.